Hello, everyone, and we are back today with Camila Dolinova?
Ooh.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. Camila Dolinova.
Camila. All right, thank you very much.
That's okay.
With Evil Overlord Games.
Yep.
And we're going to speak a little bit about, I also cannot pronounce this game's name.
Susurrus.
Okay.
Season of Tides, yes.
Okay. So just kind of walk us through with just what got you to start working on this game and what makes you passionate about it.
Sure. Well, I'm the communications manager for the company, so I started with the company early this year.
Mm-hmm.
The company's only existed since October last year.
Okay.
But the people who really developed and wrote and worked on it were looking to do something that had a deeper narrative and a more emotionally compelling story and character dynamics than a lot of video games really have. This is really focused on story, and that's something that I'm passionate about. Just because I have an MFA in creative writing, so
Yeah.
I haven't actually been in games for that long, but I'm really finding myself now in a place where I'm working on something that's really up my alley in terms of focusing a lot on this deep narrative dynamic.
Right. So you talked about your degree a little bit, but how was your pathing into getting into your current position? How did you stumble upon this?
It's strange. I was working pretty independently for a long time, and I went through some life changes and ended up sort of randomly in the video game world as an office manager at another studio. And then when I was looking to do something more involved, more direct in the industry, I found this company that was actually being run by a group of friends in Boston, and that was brand new and looking to bring people in and together to creating something kind of special and new.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So can you just give us sort of an idea of how the gameplay works in this game?
Sure. The gameplay is you read and you click. It is basically I described it to a close friend of mine, and she said, so basically you're making a choose-your-own-adventure MMO, and I was like, yes, absolutely. That is what we're calling it from now on and forever. So it is basically a reading game. It's an urban fantasy horror game. Conspiracy theories, vampires, werewolves, and mages,
Oh, wow.
your nightmares coming to life, all of this kind of stuff. And much like in some other video games where the story progresses in a choice-making fashion, you read prose, you make choices, and you move through the story that way.
Mm-hmm.
The difference with this game is that it's multiplayer. So even though you're mostly having a single player experience when you play it, other people are playing it online, and the cumulative actions and choices that other people take shifts the way the game world behaves and what quests become available and what factions come into power.
Oh, wow. So if someone, can you give an example like that? Is there elections or...
Yeah, so one of the ways it works is that different cumulative choices on certain quests will push what we call the city cycles forward. So there are different influences that are ascendant at any given time. And the more people make particular choices, the more it turns that wheel. And then the city cycle will shift, at which point different things become ascendant, whether it's a corporate influence or a mystical influence or a kind of intelligence, like underground CIA type influence. Those different influences come into ascendance based on player actions. The other thing is that there are 10 factions that you can play in. And later in the game, we haven't actually developed this all out yet. It's sort of, we update every 2 weeks and we're adding more content all the time. But there will be faction contests. So people playing for given factions will be doing quests that advance the interests of a given faction. And meanwhile, other players will be doing the same for their own factions. Or they may be doing quests that sabotage the agendas of a different faction. And who comes out on top in that melee will also determine which groups of people get which awards or which quests might pop up because some rogue mage has suddenly, come into power because their faction has been given an extra boost.
Yeah.
So the writing team and the way that we release material is actually responsive to to player activity.
Right.
So.
I'm sure there's probably examples of this is definitely going to go down this route, and then you get the results in, and it's
Oops. Yeah.
So, is there anything that was in development or like is currently being pushed out with these updates every 2 weeks, where it seems like, oh, this is definitely the way it was going to go, and the whole development process and the writing process had to change because of the way that the community has chosen things? Like, is there an example of that?
Yeah, so that hasn't happened quite yet.
Okay.
We've only been live since August, and our game is in what we're calling early edition.
Mm-hmm.
And those types of things I'm sure will develop. This particular iteration of the game is called Season of Tides as a subtitle. We are looking at story arcs, so that we're in our first year season story arc. So it's entirely possible that things will shift along the way such that the writers will have to write to, in terms of the larger arc,
Right.
a different ending or, a slightly different, these games that say they'll remember that, or your choices matter, like we're
But it
really,
really
trying
does.
to make it really matter.
Yeah.
We did have an initial very simple contest that began with the total solar eclipse in August and ended at the autumn equinox. And that was just basically a species contest where the vampires, the werewolves, and the mages all got this sphere that they had to collect this magical currency called glimmer in, and whoever turned in the most got a special thing. So we did last week, in fact, we put in a new location and a new source of power for vampires.
Wow.
Called the Red Wellspring. And so that's something where it's like, okay, vampires win. Hey, Duncan, our art director, can you make us art for this new, can you make us a blood fountain? Like maybe with a dragon. And he totally did, and it's beautiful.
Great.
So yeah, things like that.
It seems like a really interesting company to be in, a game to work on, because you never have, like, this is definitely what we're doing for the next 6 weeks. With, like, exceptions, of course, but, like, I can see how when the game picks up in popularity and when people start to realize a little bit more that they can kind of game the system, how they can tease and play back and forth with the developers and try to shape the story.
We're dreading that part. No, but, we definitely have a world that we're working within. But yeah, there are so many dynamic elements in terms of, you have 10 factions, that's a lot of moving parts. And we also have a lot of contract writers and stuff working on the different parts.
Right.
Myself included now, actually. So
Oh,
I've gotten into the writing piece
that's
a little
great.
bit. I haven't put my piece in yet. But
Yeah.
so a lot of us are working on all the moving parts, and so, it will be indeed interesting to see what happens
Great.
once it gets a little bigger.
All right. Could you remind us of the website and the name of the companies and everything?
Sure. The company is Evil Overlord Games. We're at eviloverlordgames.com. The website for the game is susurrusgame.com, and that's SUSURRUS. And what was the other part?
Is there anything that you could kind of tease to us, like a next event for the winter coming up, so we can keep tabs on?
Yeah, so what's coming up very soon, in fact, is we can't see the game, unfortunately, because of technical difficulties, but
sorry.
It's actually fine, because we're going to be unveiling an all-new UI in a couple of weeks that's going to really, really showcase and highlight the art.
Fantastic.
Because we have really gorgeous art, and right now it's a little bit shoved up to the top of the screen and not really highlighted. So we're going to be having a new UI, and we're going to be having an avatar creator so that you can make your own character look how you want them to look. And that's going to be gender diverse and
great.
all kinds of, like, we're going to try and make that as as representative of what we think people are going to want as possible.
Great. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your time this weekend to chat with us about your game. Sorry that we had technical difficulties, but that just means that people have to go and explore and find it out themselves.
Oh, play now. We're evil. Mind control. Actually, my official title at the company is Minister of Mind Control. So,
oh, amazing. That
as
is
you can see,
great.
I'm a total hypnotist.
I'm in love with this game, so it obviously worked.
Ooh, evil. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much.